Let me introduce myself. I'm Mark Tabor, landscape architect and park planner with Denver Parks and Recreation, and the project manager for this this master plan effort. And my colleague Laura Morales from our communications group is helping guide us with our outreach and with our meeting performance tonight. Our consultant team is led by Heather Noyes from Studio CPG, and her colleague at NHN Consulting is Nora Newrider, who is working with us on public engagement and is our outreach coordinator for the team. Next slide, please.
Entonces, yo soy Mark Tabor, soy arquitecto de paisajes, también soy planificador municipal y estoy gestionando este proyecto para este plan maestro. Luego está Laura Morales del grupo de comunicación que nos está ayudando con esta comunicación con el público y con la logística de esta reunión de esta noche. Luego con el equipo de consultores está Heather Noyes de Estudio CPG y su colega con NHN Consulting, Nora Newrider, que también nos está ayudando con la comunicación con el público y con la participación de la comunidad. Siguiente diapositiva.
Thank you, Maite. And let me introduce Maite Larroca is doing our Spanish interpretation tonight, and I will let her describe how you can, our Spanish-speaking participants can access her translation. My understanding is that to continue in English for our English speakers is a setting at the bottom, a globe setting at the bottom. Is that correct, Laura?
It'll appear in a minute.
Okay, yeah. Very good. And so I'll let Maite explain, to our Spanish-speaking audience.
Ok, mi nombre es Maite, soy su intérprete de español. Voy a hacer la interpretación al español esta noche. Para dejarles saber a los hispanosparlantes, si desean escuchar esta presentación en el idioma español, en el margen inferior de su pantalla, en breve van a ver un icono que parece una esfera o un globo terráqueo. Este lo seleccionan y seleccionan el canal de español. Para aquellos que desean escuchar la presentación en inglés, de igual manera, tienen que seleccionar el icono de la esfera del globo terráqueo y seleccionar el canal de español. Y eso les aparecerá en breve.
Okay, so you should be able to see an interpretation globe at the bottom. If you want to hear it in English, you can select English. And if you want to hear it in Spanish, you can select Spanish. And so now they will be separate. Thanks.
Great, and thank you for that. The objective for tonight's meeting is to share our progress to date on the plan and to share with you some of the ideas for future improvements of the park. And this is really an opportunity for us to hear from you. The comments and questions are encouraged in the chat room. So please, at the bottom, participate with your questions and comments. Get those into us, and we will respond to those as many as we can at the end of the meeting. And we will be responding to those in written form after the meeting, and we'll share that with you on our website. There'll be polling questions for you to express your preferences about some of the ideas we share with you and some of the park visions that we've developed. And again, we'll be recording the meeting, and there'll be a transcript of questions and answers that will be available post-meeting. So again, we thank you very much for joining us. Next slide, please. The overview of the master planning process is first, what is a master plan? It's a guidance document that focuses future funding for important park improvements that the plan identifies and a phasing for that to occur. Usually the timing is from 5 to 10 years for a plan to really be realized in kind of our funding cycles. So the objective of this master plan is to recognize and help us understand and to reflect community values for the park, to identify accurately the features and amenities that need to be restored and renewed, and to set a priority schedule for what needs to happen first and for how much it's going to cost. So again, tonight you'll be helping us craft that unified park vision that will be our preferred plan coming out of the results of our final master plan. Next slide, please. This is our project timeline. We started last March with looking in depth at the park with assessments of all the park's elements, analyzing those elements to determine who uses them, what kind of condition they're in. That led us to identify some basic improvements that we'll share with you tonight that will be part of the preferred plan going forward, because they are absolutely needed to make the park usable and more usable than it is even today. And we'll share with you some vision option enhancements. Next by December, we'll have emerging a preferred vision that will be kind of a combination of some of these suggested visions we're presenting tonight, and we'll have recommendations and a final plan in March. We had a survey number 1 in this late summer, which we got a fantastic response for, and a second survey will be coming out this coming Monday. So next slide, please. We've been talking to a lot of folks, and thank you for being part of the discussion tonight, but we've had discussions over this last 9 months with monthly meetings of our advisory committee that are representatives from a variety of our stakeholder groups, our neighbors, our local community members, and some of the institutions and organizations that border the park and its community. Close contact with city council offices, District 3, District 10, and our council at large, Representative Councilman or Councilwoman Ortega's office. Variety of stakeholders we've had some focused discussions with in the academic community, in our religious community, some of our business owners, as well as, again, residents from our surrounding neighborhoods. And we've talked and had some focus groups with our West Campus students and staff. So the outreach to date, I told you about the survey number 1. We've posted the park, we've done flyers, we've had a number of newsletters that show and communicate our progress as we go. And we've developed a list of over 400 folks that we communicate with electronically. And so we're encouraging you and all of the people that you know and the wider community to participate in survey number 2, again, which is opening this coming Monday. Next slide, please. So we'd like to find out a little bit more about you. And so thank you, Laura. Here are a couple of questions that we'll pose that we'd like you to identify which neighborhood you are from.
Okay, looks like we have a number of people. I'll give it 5 more seconds. Okay, let's see what we've got. All right, Lincoln Park is representing tonight. Baker, Golden Triangle, Civic Center, Cap Hill, and some others as well. And feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat if you want, just so you can know your neighbors that are here. And oh, I didn't share the results. There we go. Now you can see the results. And we have one more question, right, Mark?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
What is your relationship to the park?
Oh, one more quick question to get to know who's here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the polling in a few seconds. Okay, so these are just quick little surveys here to see who's in the room. It looks like most people live nearby, some work nearby or pass when they're driving. We've got some advocates here and some others. So again, feel free to use our chat to introduce yourselves, and you can use the chat to ask questions as well. And we'll get, before we get to the Q&A at the end.
Thank you, Laura. Next slide, please. So as you can see from the graphic, and a lot of you are local neighbors, we are part of and surrounded by 5 inner-city neighborhoods to the south of downtown, and bisected by Spear Boulevard. And we have neighbors in the business community and in special districts in the art community, and in both La Alma Lincoln as well as the Golden Triangle. We have institutions, primarily our West Campus, Denver Public Schools campus, which is actually 3 institutions, and our major Denver Health Medical Center campus directly to our south. I might also point out the 10-minute walk shed, if you will, is shown in with the perimeter there. That's the communities, the parts of our local neighborhoods that can walk to the park within 10 minutes. And that is a game plan goal for coming out of our recent strategic plan. Next slide, please. Let's look at the site itself. As you can see, a major attribute of the park is its mature tree cover, and that urban forest is so special to a lot of the park users that we've communicated with. You can see the evergreens in the darker color, and the deciduous trees and the ornamental trees in the lighter color. But you know, those trees are reaching an age that canopy needs to be renewed and encouraged. We've got lots of historic features, historic steps, the historic terrace that once had a platform and a pavilion on it. And we've got all kinds of uses in the park, both on the open lawn area as well as basketball and playground areas, and in our picnic areas as well. But we've got some serious maintenance and facility issues, like the conditions of our walks, which are you know, in uniformly fair to poor condition park-wide. And we have extreme challenges as the park is surrounded by very busy streets, and getting to the park, even though a lot of people have close access to the park, is challenging, and we've got to do something about that. So that's kind of a context for moving into you know, some of the recommendations that I'll be sharing with you in a moment. Next slide, please. But the park has an amazing history. It was a gem, and it is a gem, in the City Beautiful movement as the park system was expanding and being developed at the turn of the century. You can see the historic reflecting pool and the historic pavilion, both of which don't exist anymore, but of course the perimeter of the reflecting pool can still be seen. You can see the historic flower gardens that in the lower right-hand image that used to be on the north side of the park, and a beautiful artificial stream feature, that water feature that was fed by Cherry Creek on the south side of the park. And the views into and out and from the park were part of its features too. But as much as the architectural history and the beauty of the park was part of its history, the cultural history and the important neighborhood movements and figures and events that happened in the park, like First Amendment demonstrations and other activities, particularly from our Latinx community on the west side during the 60s and 70s, and really for throughout its history, it's been a community gathering space. So that's one of the stories that we need to tell as well. Next slide, please. So let me share some of these basic improvements for the park that we've learned from the users of the park that have shared, and from our own analysis. Access and safety, I just mentioned, are two of the most challenging things that keep people from using the park more frequently and more safely. We need to replace and interconnect the walking paths. We need to provide bikeway connections both to and through the park, particularly to the north, from the south to the north, and again, connecting two of our neighboring neighborhoods with bike connections as well as safe pedestrian connections. We need better safety improvements and a better connection to the entrance of the West Campus connection. That was a historic connection that needs to be safer and made and formalized. And we need accessible pedestrian ramps to get from the upper sections of the park to the lower sections of the park. And finally, we need pedestrian safety additions to get people across busy streets. Next slide, please. The other parts of the basic improvements are preservation and park features. We've got a number of historic features that we kind of highlighted some of the remnants of those and some of the past photographs. You're familiar with those. We need to preserve those historic features. We need to rehabilitate the lawn and the active turf areas for active sports and the activities, yoga classes and other activities that occur on them. We need to renew aging picnic and playground areas. We need to restore and renew the tree canopy that we talked about before. And we need to do that restoration of the tree canopy to make sure we preserve those incredible views from the parkway as well as views from the park to the surrounding neighborhoods. And finally, we want to celebrate the park entrances. Sometimes they're so hidden that people, rarely even have an entry experience into the park. We can emphasize those as a basic improvement for a better park. So next slide, please. But we have some ideas for some enhancements and really some embellishments of that basic plan that we'd like to share with you. And we've kind of set them into three themes, if you will. One, that the legacy theme that celebrates and reimagines our historic features in the park. So that's an emphasis of that particular vision. We've got a health vision that focuses on ideas and improvements that can increase visitor health and user health and fitness, as well as making the park more environmentally sustainable. And then finally, in connections, we've got some ideas that can promote more gathering and community connections with the park. And in each of these visions, we've got some improvement ideas that aren't separate, but can be combined and can overlay, in some cases, one another. And so we're going to ask you to identify some favorites of some of those ideas that we present to you. But this is a little bit like a la carte menu. You can pick from a variety of visions of some of those elements and help us come up with the optimal preferred plan. So let's talk about some of the visions in specifics. First, the legacy plan. In this plan, we're promoting an architectural feature that recalls the historic pavilion on the terrace. And we also think the terrace can be enhanced for greater gathering with seating stairs and other improvements that really make that terrace a focal element. We would like to highlight the opportunity for adding a formal garden where that formal garden used to exist on the north side of the park, as well as other garden spaces and an interconnecting garden walk among them. Adding some seat wall of part of framing that historic reflecting pool can help to kind of recall that reflecting pool, and could also provide some seating for people wanting to watch active uses happening on the turf field. But at night, that area could be specially lit with special light features that might actually recall its original existence as a reflecting pool, which could be very fun. And then finally, reinterpreting that swale that we saw in the historic photo on the south side of the park could as a dry stream bed, could be an incredible feature, an attraction element for users on that side of the park. Next slide, please. Oh, and this shows in kind of a profile or a section, what that architectural feature could look like. This is just a concept, but if we were to reimagine this terrace area as a framing this beautiful view to the west, Denver Public Schools campus, and that making those steps, rethinking those steps as seating areas, adding the formal gardens as you see in this image. You might notice the ramps down from the upper level down to the lower level would be an important aspect of this terrace improvement. And this is, an illustration of some of what some of those legacy ideas could look like. Next image, please. Yeah, this is the health vision. And in this vision, we're looking at if we add exercise stations to a variety of locations. This is just kind of a conceptual diagram, but that could be part of a walking and running loop trail, 1K, that encircles the park, that allows people to get exercise walking or running, and would resurface that path along the historic section of trail along Spear Boulevard that right now is pretty hard to walk because it's so uneven and so kind of broken up a little bit and in poor condition. Part of this is the idea of health is environmental health. So introducing some low water landscapes on the slopes is an opportunity for areas that aren't used for active recreation to have some different kinds of interesting landscape improvements and plant features. And adding rain garden wetlands can help to clean some of the stormwater drainage that comes into the park and can be cleansed and can be actually used as a garden feature. So those are some of the ideas that we think. Oh, and I shouldn't forget, adding a nature play feature to our playground could certainly engage our younger residents and the children's groups that use the park to get much more engaged with the park. Next slide, please. These are some of the images of what that could look like, including the nature play improvement and a large, as being part of an updated playground feature. You can see the loop, 1K loop trail on both sides of the park that would encircle the park, and a rain garden feature with potentially a bridge over that feature, and maybe even a pump track for kids to use their bikes on. So that's our vision for some of the health improvements. Next slide. And finally, our connection idea is about gathering and really reaching out to our local neighbors and allowing them to use the park in groups and with their family. We want to integrate and welcome the surrounding communities into the park, and one way is by incorporating this 5280 trail corridor that would come through 9th Avenue, would come through the park and would cross Spear and then continue on Bannock Street on the Golden Triangle side. So that's part of opening up to the wider community that this connection vision, could realize. We want to look at the opportunity for the existing maintenance facility to be a community center and a place for community gathering, and maybe a place for public art. We also want to explore the opportunity of an overlook and some vertical surfaces as part of that overlook that could support some more public art and could be a great viewing location from below and above. And maybe the historic swale could be a pollinator garden that actually some of the school groups and some of the West DPS students could interact with as a pollinator garden, as a learning experience. And adding group picnic areas for family use in the park, where the picnic areas now are largely individual tables. We could explore group picnic areas where multi-generational family groups could better utilize the park, and outdoor classrooms that can again better serve our West campus populations. Next slide, please. These are some of the images that historic maintenance shed could again be rehabilitated for a community purpose associated with public art. The group picnic areas you see shown here, and maybe bisected by a 5280 trail that has interpretive rest areas along it that tell the story of some of the historic features and some of the cultural history of the park. And so these are some of the features that are exciting about the connection vision. Next slide. And what we'd ask you to do now that you've seen kind of the display of some of the ideas and the different visions, is we'll take a poll and allow you to pick some of your favorites. These are some of the ideas in legacy that we'd like you to express your preference for and your favorites.
give it a little bit longer. Votes are coming in. There's a question of, can we mix and match parts? And yes, we'll be asking about the other sections that you just saw. So you can select the ones you like from all three in a second.
Yeah, these could be the ultimate popularity contest. You can really pick the ones you like and you can mix and match.
And you should be seeing a poll that popped up, and you can vote just by checking the ones you like. We are getting most of them in, so I'm only going to leave this up for 5 more seconds. But if you didn't see it, hopefully you'll see the next one. Yeah, if you're not seeing a poll, I will, let's see if we can get the next one to you. I'm going to end this.
So Laura, give us just a moment when we go to the next slide, just for people to scan the images, because the images describe a little bit of being examples of what some of these ideas could look like. And then people will have a chance to select their favorites on the poll.
All right, and it looks like the flower gardens and garden walk were pretty popular here, followed by historic reflecting pool lighting, and reinterpreting the historic swale as a dry stream bed, and the enhanced seating, and then the added seat wall were the bottom 2 on this quick poll.
Great, thanks for that feedback. Those are some of my favorites too. So next slide, please.
Great. So I am going to hit launch poll. If you are not seeing it right now, I can try and put it in the chat. It might be a pop-up being blocked from your computer. So I apologize for in the chat if you're not seeing it.
So again, see, these are some of the health ideas for environmental and for personal health.
Okay, I'm going to close this in a few seconds. All right. So just from this quick poll, we have the 1K walking, running loop trail pretty popular, surfacing the path on the historic parkways, as well as the rain garden wetlands, followed by nature play features at a playground. And then the lowest 2 on here are low water landscapes on slopes and adding exercise stations.
Laura, are you taking mail-in ballots? Just
well, we'll have the survey on Monday so people can vote all over again.
Just kidding. Thank you. So next slide, please. And these are some images of ideas for connection with public art, with gathering spaces, with safer connections. Let us know what you think about some of these ideas.
Great. I'll be stopping this in 5 seconds or so. Okay. Okay, a lot closer on this one. People liked a lot of them. So we've got the 9th Avenue Park Overlook, Community Center Plaza are pretty popular, as well as the swale becoming a pollinator garden. We've got the group picnic areas and outdoor classroom and gathering spaces is popular. And the least popular on this one was the 5280 corridor.
Great, thank you for that feedback. And at this time, we've got about 20 minutes, and we'd like to take your questions and comments from the chat. And I think Nora's going to help us walk through this this section of the meeting. If she can help us, is she?
Yep, I'm here.
There you are.
And actually, I'm going to start with the very last question that just came in, because it relates to one of the options that we just considered, which is there may be people who are not familiar with the 5280 corridor. Is there a thumbnail sketch of what that is so that we can bring people up to speed?
You bet. The 5280 loop came out of the outdoor downtown plan, and it is a loop that encircles downtown and some of the adjacent close-in inner-city neighborhoods, and it would be viewed as as both a cultural and an exercise feature that people could do, visitors and locals alike, that could enjoy the features of downtown and some of the special features, especially like Sunken Gardens. So so this would be one stop along that 5280 loop that really encircles much of downtown.
Great, thanks. We actually have another question regarding sort of the maintenance of exercise stations. Is if you introduce features like that into a park, what are the maintenance implications?
Yeah, that's a good question. That technology has come a long way. So many of the manufacturers that have building this equipment have now been doing that for over 10 years, and the machines are quite durable. They're intended to be external, but they're much more sophisticated, and they're much they allowed the kinds of exercise that goes beyond just the pull-up bars and the sit-up stations that we might be familiar with in some of the older parks in the exercise stations along those. These can have cardio kinds of machines, and they're quite durable. And so we've had good luck with these in other parks. They can be sometimes associated with and located with children's play areas, so adults can exercise while they're watching their kids play on the playgrounds. There's a lot of different ways that these can be located and used, or they can be along a circuit like this loop trail.
The next question that I have is one that is an ever favorite question, which has to do with restrooms. What is the possibility or likelihood of restrooms in the park?
The restrooms in this park has never had a restroom in it historically, and restrooms frequently in our current context are associated with parks that have permitted athletic fields that have larger events, that have a larger number of people that come from outside the neighborhood and outside the immediate adjacent community, that converge on the park and will need those kinds of facilities. There's the opportunity, and as we have in many parks, for special events in the park, to have temporary portable restrooms for events in the park. But you know, this park again has never had a restroom and would be smaller than parks that we normally support having permanent restrooms located in.
Great. We actually have a request from Lauren to ask a live question, and I'm hoping that Laura can help us take him live.
Alrighty, my name's Lauren, not Laura. It happens a lot. As you know, someone that's, yeah, I see with all four eyes. Okay, we all have four eyes here. But first of all, I love the metaphor of like it being like, you know, a salad bar, like, you know, a cafeteria, because I'm former Episcopal, which often gets called cafeteria Catholic. However, let me just get to the, like, you know, thrust of my first question, which is in regards to the bee pollination thing. I mean, we've heard over the years about things like West African bees. We've heard about, you know, West African Nile bees. Most recently, we've heard a lot about, you know, just honeybees. And I mean, my biggest worry is that we introduce a non-native species of bee to this park, and it disrupts the entire ecosystem of the park. What does someone on this call that knows more about bees than I do, particularly just invasive species, what could they say to that point that I have?
Well, I'm afraid I can't, you know, be characterized as a specialist in that area, except that you know, we have experience in parks of developing pollinator gardens that are focused on, you know, native bees and other insects that and I guess our experience is we haven't found that they do anything to you know, to unbalance the local ecosystem. I think, you know, we see them both as learning tools and as aesthetic enhancements and as you know, an aid to the environment rather than a disruptor. But we can certainly, I'd love to be able to get you some better information about our experience and maybe other park districts with some of these types of improvements.
Mark, Heather, I think, has a comment to add to that.
I just wanted to say that there are classes offered to folks like us, landscape architects, that we attend, where we're learning about species. And so there's a lot of science that goes into the development, not only of the area and how that area is delineated, but the species that gets planted in there. And it's not, it's very carefully and thoughtfully designed. It's cross-checked with a lot of other people who know a lot more about them than we do. So I just want to give you some confidence that we're not, or there wouldn't be any kind of non-native plant introduced that would raise those kind of issues. But we're working on some of those projects right now.
Thank you, Heather. And I think that answers my question, actually. I mean, I come from Southern California where, like, I mean, I was trying to actually, like, mail cacti back to my home, and I just realized I'm committing a felony if I do, or I'm committing a, you know, state law if I do this. So, and If you can, I would be interested in seeing about taking those classes. I assume they're through the Botanic Gardens about like native versus non-native species and like how they affect like an ecosystem.
So yeah, we've got your note in the chat, and we've got a list of, we can respond to that. CSU Extension, all those agencies provide that kind of information. So we'll plug you in.
All right, I think that'll be a good thing for us to do. And then my second, I guess, kind of clarifying comment in regards to the 5280 trail is I used to live in Georgia, specifically Athens, Georgia, and I was around Atlanta for a fair amount of time. And there are two kind of major greenways in those areas that in Athens, it mirrors the old like kind of rails lines. So they're rail to trails basically conversions. So one of the rails to trails pieces is actually, and I look like Michael Stipe right now a little bit, over on kind of the area where the Murmur Bridge is, which is like an album that the band REM put out back in the like 70s, I think. But these rail to trails things are very similar to what 5280 is, correct? It like follows old like cable car lines here in Denver.
No.
Okay, well, okay. Thanks for the answer. but what is the 5280 in relation to like previous infrastructure?
I think it's pedestrian and bike friendly streets, or streets that can be made safe and bike and pedestrian friendly for and that go through points of interest. And so I think those are some of the major determinants of how it's been laid out.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I actually would like a little bit more clarification then, because I came in thinking like, oh, this is old train lines or old like trolley lines or old something lines, but I guess it kind of is low stress streets now that I think about it, just based on the map that I'm thinking of in my head. But thanks for the clarification on that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lauren. We do have another question from Troy asking about activation of the green spaces with community events like farmers markets and outdoor concerts, and what the capacity and possibility is of something like that.
Well, I'm super glad that came up, because I think the opportunity to re-envision Alati Street for the section that borders the west side of the park for food trucks or for special events or for a farmer's market. You know, when school isn't in session, that street, you know, can easily be bypassed for and for neighbors to still be able to access their neighborhoods. But that frontage with the park is a golden opportunity for a variety of uses, and those would be, you know, wonderful elements to include in the plan, which we didn't mention today, but could be great enhancements and great opportunities.
We have a raised hand from Selena. Selena, did you have a question that you wanted to ask live?
Oh, yeah, sure. I thought there was a long line for questions, so yay, thank you for getting back to me quickly. So being someone from Lincoln Park, I tend to enter the park in that space during on campus, through campus, West High School. So on 10th Avenue, coming from Lincoln Park into the park, that's where I enter the park. And as it is during the winter time, just for those of us on this side of the park, it's a challenge to jump right into the park. We sort of have to skirt, either go to the right or go to the left and go around in order to access sidewalk for running or walking. In the winter time, you just kind of have to trudge across through the snow. And I know it's just a minor detail as far as what you were mentioning earlier about celebrating the entrances. And it was just something that I would like to propose thought toward, just considering access and how those of us on the west side would access the park. And I know that you have the pavilion, and I think that there's going to be more like sidewalk infrastructure in that area. But yeah, I guess that's the only thing that I wanted to bring up, which is why I really loved the idea about the formal garden in that area. I guess I don't really, that wasn't a question. My question was, it looked like you have a formal garden as well as an exercise area, as well as a dog run as potentials, right, for that area, for that northern triangle area?
Yeah, that's correct. Those different ways that those ideas could potentially share that space as well as you know, so they could. I think in our legacy we were looking at a larger flower bed in the more historical context. But combining it with a certain portion of it that had an off-leash little quadrant. It would be small, but in the health vision, I think we talked about some of the sections that at least on the southern side of that area potentially being available for more active uses.
Southern side, the active uses in the southern side, is that what you just said? Or
yeah, we're talking about that the triangle, the northern triangle that
okay.
Yeah, that really was dominated by the historic gardens in when the park was in its early days.
Well, thank you. Thanks for answering the question, and thanks for this forum. It's really, really nice to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Joining us.
We do have actually two questions about the sidewalk on the Spear Boulevard side, and actually that side of the park generally. One being, will the sidewalk along Spear be addressed in terms of its current state? And is there an opportunity for plant screenings along that side to protect the park from that very busy thoroughfare? And the same actually goes for 8th Avenue.
Yeah, the intent under a basic improvement is that corridor is made safe for circulating on, the idea was in the loop trail, it could be incorporated with a loop trail and could become a soft pathway up above, where the network of walks in the interior of the park could be standard concrete trails, or that upper trail could be brought up to standard with new concrete that is level and safe and drains well and is a safe surface for year-round use. It's a very narrow tree lawn in that area, probably not much more than a couple 3 feet wide between the existing pathway and the curb that right now has a row of street trees along it. Being able to reconfigure that pathway and maybe move it a little bit over so it has a little bit more separation is an opportunity. Just the nature of the way that was constructed, kind of with fairly steep slopes on the west side of that, you don't have a lot of width to work with up there. But I think making it safer, making it more usable, and looking at enhancing the separation would all be our objectives in reimagining that corridor.
We have time for one more question, and it's from Nancy, who just raised her hand. I want to squeeze that in before we have to end our meeting in a couple of minutes. So Nancy, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention something that kind of came up, but maybe I felt was glossed over a little bit. And I'm from the Capitol Hill neighborhood, so I often approach this from the west. And a couple of things that have been mentioned in the chat is the safe crossing. So whether I'm at 11th or Bannock or 8th, I feel like there could be done a lot to enhance those entrances and the crossings. And then I'm also the person who's whether it's Creek Trail or walking through the park at night, I'm that person doing it at 10 o'clock at night. So I would greatly appreciate if we look into some lighting and some safety from that standpoint, just because not all of us are early morning risers. So thank you for letting me ask, or at least state my opinion.
No, those are great priorities, and safety in the evening hours. Park curfew citywide is 11 o'clock, but in times of throughout the year, evening use and evening safety is very important. So, and we're pretty thrilled to have our Department of Transportation and Infrastructure planning team members. I think maybe some of them are joining us tonight, and they're working actively on transportation plans that are making intersections and crossings safer, as well as bike and pedestrian routes, you know, on either side of those intersections. So we're pretty thrilled that we're working with other companion and colleague agencies in the city to make access to this park and through the park safer. So Heather, can you lead us through
Yeah,
some?
sure. Thanks. This is just kind of a wrap-up slide in case people are looking for additional information. I think the PowerPoint and Mark skipped. I didn't skip, but there's a whole lot of background information that's was referenced in some of these slides, and we only had an hour with you tonight. So if you want to do a deeper dive into some of the assessments, there was an analysis. We've got the results from the first survey. We have a summary of stakeholder interviews, which is really fascinating because those were one-on-one discussions with the folks listed in the prior slide. The results of the focus groups and a series of presentations that we gave to the advisory committee. All that's in this depository on the project webpage, and the website is there, Denver Gov, Park Projects, and then scroll down and look for Sunken Gardens. Next up, an additional way for you to participate will be to take survey number 2. We expect that to be launched on Monday. We're going to have a dual language survey, one in English and one in Spanish. And that survey is going to run through the end of the year. And it will give you another opportunity to chime in and express your priorities, not just for kind of the project, but for each one of these options. So we really hope that not only will you take it, but you'll spread that link along to your friends and your neighbors and other family members. Tonight's presentation, the whole recording, will also end up in this library on the project website. And in addition, we know there are a lot of people online here and we didn't get to all the questions, so we're going to be scrolling through the chat. Lauren, that's where we'll give you more information about the pollinator gardens, and you'll be able to find that under chat questions probably within a week. And this is the really important piece. This link at the bottom of the slide will take you directly to a form. And if you just give us your email address, your name and your email address, you will receive project updates. And we really hope to add your name to the list. And I'm going to turn it back to Mark, but everybody's questions in the chat are fabulous. And we really thank you. So, Mark?
Yeah, and I want to echo the thanks for everybody participating tonight. This is great feedback, and we're pretty inspired about the opportunities to make this park all it can be, and really a go-to place for all of our neighbors. And we want to reiterate that we'll have answers to all the chat questions that we came up with that maybe we didn't cover. So that'll be online, and we invite you to continue to be involved in this process as we culminate this plan. And thank you again for your time tonight. And everybody be safe out there.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. Have a great night.
Bye, neighbors.